So this meditation technique is relatively straightforward, but I think it's a good one, sometimes even a surprisingly challenging one. And there are a lot of different variations we can do on it and applications we can do beyond the meditation session into our day-to-day lives that I think can help a lot, help clear our minds, help promote healing, and gradually help us kind of get past some of the hang-ups and insecurities and things like that we have, just so we're living more in flow. So the technique is to use this phrase as something of a mantra during a meditation. And so the technique is to use these words. This moment is exactly as it should be. This moment is exactly as it should be. And so the technique is as simple as, assuming a meditation position, sit down, lie down, stand, whatever you're feeling, and say these words. And as you do it, I think you'll find that it's a surprisingly, it brings up a lot of reactivity in the body, especially if you're attending to your feelings, your physical feelings, your emotions as they're coming up in response. Because there's obviously, for most of us, a very intense counter reaction saying that this isn't true. Even in a moment of meditation, even if we've kind of got our calm, quiet room, maybe some of our favorite music on, things are chill, even in that moment, it can be difficult to believe that this is actually true, to mean this when we say it. And so I think one of the things you're going to want to notice as you're doing the meditation is to attend to your reactivity. And one of the things I think is beautiful about this technique is that it's all absorbing. Right? It doesn't say that moment is exactly as it should be, or the moment is exactly as it should be if ... right? It's an unconditional statement. And so if you say it, and then you feel a voice or something arise of you saying, oh my God, that's nonsense, this is terrible, what are you thinking? This is the opposite of what it should be, it's terrible, all those things, negativity. If in the next moment you say the phrase, in a way you're kind of honoring that reaction, right? You're giving that reaction space to be. We're not trying to drive it away. We're not trying to say that that reaction is wrong, right? We're actually just saying that no matter what is occurring in the moment, this moment is exactly as it should be. This moment is exactly as it should be. And so I think technique-wise, one way I was doing it yesterday was alternating. So I'd breathe in, breathe out, and then after I finished the exhale, I would say it out loud. And then I would do another breath in, and then this time I would say it, but I would say it quietly in my heart. And I would see if I could kind of feel it coming from this space here. And so I did a 10 count, 5 aloud, 5 in my heart, of the full statement. I think another thing we could start to do with this technique is to begin to clip it down. These are kind of variations on the technique. And, because this statement is a bit of a mouthful. And after a while, especially if you're focusing on too much of the words, it can become a little too cognitive, a little too wordy. And it's easy then to kind of drift off within the meditation. We're kind of going through the motions of the statement, but not really attending to what's going on. And so I find that varying the technique, if only slightly, tends to keep us a little more engaged and take some of the emphasis sometimes off of just the activity of what we're doing and keeps us focused on the intention of what we're doing. So some of the variations I was doing here, I would take pairs of the words and say them instead. So I would say this and is, right? This is, right? I would say moment and exactly, right? You could use be, and you could use any of the words you want, but I think those are maybe kind of the 4 or 5 here that I think carry the most weight for us. And so again, using that same technique, whatever works for you, you could say it all internally, you could say it all aloud, you could do the mixing. It could be something where you're saying the phrase over and over in kind of a trance way, like a chant. Another way you could do it is do more of just a normal breathing meditation. And if you notice you've drifted off, or if you notice that difficult emotions are arising, you could use this to kind of stabilize yourself. I like to think of that like a boat. It has bumpers on the side when it's in the dock to prevent it from hitting against the dock and hurting the hull of the boat. So you could think of this phrase, the little parts of the phrase, like being your little bumpers. And as your boat in meditation kind of starts to drift toward the dock to hit something, this kind of gently puts you back into the middle, into that poise, that balance, where you're not bumping up against the walls, you're just gently kind of bobbing in place. So that's the technique. These are some of the variations. And again, one of the things I really like about this is you can think of it as creating an atmosphere in your mind and your body. The atmosphere is one of kind of a radical acceptance, right? It's saying that this moment, right, exactly as it is exactly as it should be, which again, the mind is going to rebel against that. The body is likely to rebel against that. But if we say it, and especially if we say it repeatedly, we'll kind of start to create an atmosphere or a vibe. And that then creates a safer space for us to explore, right? If we want to do more of a breathing meditation, a feeling meditation, something like that, I think you'll find that the atmosphere, the vibe that this generates, creates a sense of safety and stability in which to maybe experiment a little more or to go into maybe difficult or scary places, knowing that you'll always be able to kind of come back up to this. You could think of it as if you're a diver diving into a coral reef or an area that's maybe a little more dangerous, this is kind of like your boat to come back to, right? Your little buoy to hang on to, catch your breath, regather, refocus, right? And kind of decide maybe what to do from there. So you could think of this as a way, even though it's kind of destabilizing to the ego, it also provides a very stable area for us in our consciousness to have something to hang on to that we know is going to be comforting, not judgmental, not harsh. Very briefly on the philosophy behind why this is true. I mean, first of all, I think we could just say it as an article of faith. I don't think it's something that you need a philosophical background or structure to believe in. I like to have philosophies like that to kind of lean into sometimes, especially when I feel like part of my mind is arguing against this. I like to be able to use reason and logic, in moderation, of course, to try to do a little bit of not pushing back, but kind of counterpoint to the point to balance things out. Because I know that in my mind is often saying the opposite of this, right? This moment is exactly as it should not be, right? And it's got this list of complaints about why this should be better, this is wrong, right? And it's usually not just talking about my immediate environment. It's then jumping out into the world, looking into politics, looking into the environment, looking into all kinds of issues, all of its pet peeves as to why things are wrong, bad. And so I think if we have an ability, again, we could do it as a moment of faith, we could do it just as an expression, but if there's kind of a philosophy or reasoning behind why it is, that then gives us maybe a little more confidence retaking our seat. And you kind of think of it like, your butt cheeks, if your left butt cheek sagging a little bit, right, you can kind of prop it back up, get a little more onto the right. And so if that ego energy is kind of pulling us down into that negativity, you could use the positivity as kind of a counterballast or a contrast to regain the poise. Again, we're not identifying with the negative or the positive position. What we're looking for is more balance. And so the positivity is not something we're clinging to. It's something we're just kind of filling and bringing in to balance out maybe a negative tilt toward negative, or a natural tilt we have toward negativity. The philosophy I have on it is essentially that, we're an instantiated being, which is an expression of a spirit, which is an expression of a God, which is an expression of a oneness, the oneness being the all state in which everything occurs. And essentially that the essence of all this is love. And so everything that happens in our life, no matter how painful it is, how terrible it is, how much we complain about it, how much we can say honestly that it sucks and it's terrible, no matter how much, if you kind of play the Family Feud game, you pull 100 random people, would they agree with you? 100 out of 100 would say this sucks, this is terrible, you don't deserve this is wrong, all those things. We can acknowledge that that is a valid expression of one's feelings and an honest expression of one's state of mind. We can also recognize that what wisdom teachers show, what masters consistently show as they go deeper and deeper into the spiritual process, deeper and deeper into inner exploration, is they pretty consistently come back with something like this. The idea being that from our God state and our all state, where we know everything, have complete creative control over everything that is, and we're utterly loving beyond our ability down here to even imagine what that means, we are creating the environment from that position for ourselves, right? And so there's no accidents, nothing's arbitrary, there's nothing in the world that we come across that just happened to be there, right, for no good reason. Everything that we encounter, right, including ourselves, including our own inner experience, is there for our benefit. And in fact, if we knew everything, we had complete creative control, and we loved ourselves to that fullest extent, we wouldn't change a thing about what is, because we're actually creating from that very spirit all the time. And again, that's something difficult for us in our minds to understand. Again, we're primates, we evolved, we have certain priorities and things like that that we like to focus on, so we tend to chunk things into good and bad, right and wrong, and our worldview tends to spill out from there. So this idea is a difficult one for us to maintain logically in the mind, but if we use it again as kind of that counterpoint, that bumper to keep us stabilized, and again, if you want to root it in this philosophy or any other philosophy that works for you, you can realize that this isn't just kind of a feel-good statement to help us feel better, right? It's not just like a plop, flop, fizz, fizz. There's a little nonsense, feel-good nonsense that I could say. I in my heart believe that this is actually a true statement of what is. What I think is fascinating and maybe the powerful area for healing is to explore that contrast between this statement, which is an expression of my heart, and then the opposite statement, right? That things are exactly as they should not be, which is a statement of my woundedness, my ego, my confusion, my fear, my pain, my trauma, my inner child, right? All those things. And so in the meditation, what we're essentially doing is we're inviting those energies to find a harmony with each other, right? And what we're recognizing, the power of a certain positivity is that the positivity can absorb the negative and include the negative in a way the negative cannot, right? So this moment is exactly as it should be. That will embrace any complaining, right, or any yelling that this moment is not as it should be. Why? Because that complaint is part of the moment. Do you see? The positive incorporates everything without discrimination. The negative by nature is discriminating, right? It is defined by what it is opposed to. So if the negative is saying, hey, this moment is not as it should be, now the word not is kind of the point of emphasis, and it has to decide, well, what are the things about this moment that are wrong that if I removed them, it would make it right? Do you see how this is starting to divide things, to chunk things open? This is the dualistic mind, the yin-yang mind tends to be drawn more toward the negativity. And so by emphasizing the positive here, again, not in a way where we fixate on it or we exclude, but we just recognize the natural virtue of this statement and perhaps on a deep level honor the truth and fundamental truth of this statement. I think this is part of the reason, kind of below the scenes in the boiler room, so to speak, why this meditation is able to actually generate deep healing and deep change for us over time, because it's tapping into something deep in the nature of our energy and our beingness, and gradually allows this truth to become part of the truth of what we are, and in the moment to moment, helps us gain a little more peace and helps us get out of the chattering and kind of the looping that this negative focus takes into a more expansive focus. And one of the things I think you'll find, which is kind of wild, is how this notion of continuity can play in here. Because as you say this moment is exactly as it should be, right? And then we feel reactions come up to that, disagreement come up to that, protest come up to that, outrage, indignation, contempt, right? All kinds of feelings can kind of come bubbling up from that. And yet in this next moment, if we say this again, what we find, I think, is that there is a continuity we can have in ourselves that isn't so tied to our opinions and our reactions, that isn't so tied to our feelings about what just happened. That's tied more to a sense of purpose, of intention, of commitment. Maybe you could even say discipline, not in the sense of like correcting or punishing, more in the sense of keeping a focus, keeping to a plan, and not letting what arises tip us out of our balance or keep us out of our balance. And so being able to say this statement, even as the protests kind of start howling, I think allows us to find a layer of continuity within us that we may not have in our day-to-day lives when we're kind of stuck in our chatterbox going through our world of preferences, which tends to be more of a looping continuity, right, instead of a forward-arcing continuity, which I think is what you're going to find if you use a statement like this. Lastly, this is obviously something that's easier to do if we're sitting on the meditation cushion, we're in isolation, we're not dealing with the world in real time, not interacting with people. It's easier to say a statement like this, which again, we may not really fundamentally believe, or it may not mean much to us when we say it. And so if we think we're going to get off the meditation cushion and just go through the rest of our day repeating this statement over and over, that may not be realistic. It may not actually even be healthy. And so what I think we can do is we can use the meditation as an opportunity to practice the discipline, right? Really try to anchor it, really try to work with it. And then look for opportunities throughout the day to use the phrase or to use portions of the phrase. And one thing I think you could do is flex it in 3 different categories, right? Flex it at a time when you're feeling negative, right? So something doesn't go your way, get a flat tire, they messed up your order at the drive-through restaurant, right? Those are kind of maybe little examples of something big or extreme happens. You could try to practice it there. But something negative comes up, and when you say, this moment is exactly as it should be. This moment is exactly as it should be. And then move forward, right? Go back into your continuity. Address it just as you were going to address it. But see maybe whether re-anchoring through this helps. And again, you'll maybe feel howls of protest. How can you say that? How callous? Right? Let it be, right? Choose and allow, right? You say the statement and you move forward. Again, I think this helps us find a little bit of a continuity, an equanimity, a poise that we may not always have if we're ping-ponging and pinballing between our emotional reactions. Likewise, right, I said flex it in a negative, flex it also in a positive. Something's going really well. We're getting excited about something. Our favorite meal just got put in front of us. Say it then, right? And notice then how there's also going to be reactions that come up. And these reactions are like, oh yeah, thank God. Oh man, we deserve this. Oh, this has been a long time coming, right? Stuff like that. We don't tend to be as put off by those reactions because they feel like they're being friendly with us, right? They're kind of supporting us. We've got this good moment. They're bringing more positivity in. But saying this statement may give you an opportunity to notice how hidden inside some of those statements, there's actually kind of a negativity or an insecurity, a feeling like these moments are too infrequent. We need to make them happen more often. Why isn't it even better than it is now? We're better than other people because we're getting this good thing, right? And they're not, and I deserve this, right? Kind of almost maybe a justification thing going on. And so again, if we use it in not just a negative setting, but also in a positive setting, we can learn more about our reactivity, right? Learn more about kind of that inner peanut gallery and chatter we have going on, and re-find our true continuity, right? Our true sense of awareness, our true decisiveness, which exists beyond that reactivity, but as we know can be affected and even kind of pulled into that reactivity if we're not being mindful and aware. And then lastly, try to find a situation that's neutral, a situation that you wouldn't really characterize necessarily as positive or negative, or the positive and negative seem to kind of balance each other out. And say this then as well, right? This moment is exactly as it should be. This moment is exactly as it should be. And notice in that state of neutrality, whether it tends to tip you into one direction or another, what reactions tend to arise. And I think the key here is this statement doesn't need a defense, right? It doesn't need argument on its behalf. Again, you can kind of fall back into a philosophical view of things if you want to give it a little support with inside yourself. But this moment is exactly as it should be. There's something just beautifully simple about that claim. This moment is exactly as it should be. Nonsense, bull crap. How could you say that? This moment is exactly as it should be. Right? This moment is exactly as it should be. Right? In conversation, that may almost be like a maddening thing for someone to say to us over and over again because it feel like we're being ignored or we're not being honored. See though if you could say it even just with yourself. This moment is exactly as it should be. This moment is exactly as it should be. Right? And see how unconditionally you can utter that statement. Right? See if even as you're saying it, if it feels like, oh God, I feel like I'm lying to myself. I feel like I'm just making this up. This moment is exactly as it should be, right? Can you accept that? Do you need to come down on one side or the other on the issue there? Do you need to divide it up in, okay, was I really lying to myself? Was I not? See how that's kind of that dualism game again? This is a game, right? If the dualism is a spiral that curls inward, this really has that continuity there, or is maybe more like a spiral curling outward. Right? Isn't trying to divide things into good and bad, right and wrong, isn't trying to figure out what to do next, is it just embracing the moment as it comes, right, without any discrimination, right, without any division, without any insistence or resistance, or any insistence and resistance that arises is also recognized as being perfect in the moment, right? That's kind of that second curl to this that I think could be really powerful and helpful. So, good luck experimenting with it, good luck meditating, and I hope it brings you peace.